Let's stop pretending Tara Calico just vanished. She was taken, and for over 3 decades, people in New Mexico have whispered names, but never spoken them out loud. That Polaroid, it's either the proof she was alive, or the sickest joke ever played on a grieving mother. My name is Detective Daniel. Welcome to Detective Daniel Files, where we search through America's darkest and most haunting missing cases. If you're new here, kindly subscribe and tell me, where are you watching from tonight? It was just another Tuesday morning in Belen, New Mexico. 19-year-old Tara Calico wheeled her pink bike out onto the driveway. She did it every day, a daily ride along the same stretch of highway. It was routine, almost ordinary. Before leaving, she looked at her mom, Patty, and gave a line no one could forget: "If I'm not back by noon, come and find me." It sounded casual, almost playful, but those words would echo for decades, because noon came, then evening came, and Tara never returned. And here's the question every parent watching tonight must face. What if the last thing your child ever said to you was a promise like that? A promise that turned into a lifetime of waiting, searching, and never knowing. By late morning, Tara was out on NM 47, a long, lonely stretch of highway cutting through the desert outside Belen. The road was hot, dry, and exposed. No shade, no traffic lights, just open land, scrub brush, and the sound of tires on gravel. She wasn't invisible. People saw her. Several drivers passing that morning noticed the young woman on her bright pink bike, riding steady, her Walkman clipped to her side. But what else did they see? Behind her, a vehicle, not just any vehicle. Witnesses described it as an older model pickup truck, a white or dirty white Ford, 1950s style, with a camper shell covering the back. It didn't look like it belonged out there, not at that hour. It didn't just pass by and disappear. It lingered. Some said it was trailing her, not close enough to strike, but close enough to watch, close enough to make her uneasy. Imagine being 19, pedaling alone on an empty desert road, and realizing that same truck is still there, mile after mile, not overtaking you, not turning off, just following. And here is where the story splits. Some believe it was nothing more than bored small-town boys, tailing a girl for a laugh, a cruel kind of desert cat and mouse. But others believe it was something darker. Predators, hunting in broad daylight, with no fear of being seen. Ask yourself this: in a town where everybody knows everybody, where neighbors wave as they pass each other on the road, how many people saw that truck that day, and how many chose to look the other way? Was this the first clear sign of danger, or was it the last chance someone had to save her? By afternoon, searchers retracing Tara's route began to notice something unusual. Scattered along the side of the highway, lying in the dust, were pieces of her Sony Walkman, the same Walkman she always carried, clipped to her shorts, blasting her favorite cassettes as she rode. First a small fragment, then farther down the road the cassette tape itself. Was this coincidence, or a message? Some believe Tara dropped them on purpose, desperate, trying to leave a trail the way Hansel and Gretel scattered crumbs in a forest. A cry for help only the careful would notice. Others argue something colder, that her attackers ripped them away, threw them out the window as they drove, a casual act of control, erasing her ride piece by piece. What's more haunting is this: those items weren't hidden, they weren't buried. They were out there, in plain sight, for anyone driving that same road to see. Yet still, no one stopped. And here is the question that cannot be ignored. If Tara Calico was taken in broad daylight, if she fought hard enough to leave evidence behind, then what does that say about the people who drove past and did nothing? Was it fear? Was it indifference? Or was it something far worse, a community that already knew the truth and decided silence was safer than action? Back at home, noon came and went. The house stayed quiet. The pink bike never returned. Patty Calico knew something was wrong. She didn't wait. She couldn't. By afternoon, she was out on the highway, retracing every mile her daughter had planned to ride, calling her name into the desert air, hoping against hope that Tara had a flat tire, a minor accident, anything but the unthinkable. As the hours turned into night, the search grew frantic. Family, neighbors, volunteers, all combing the roadside. Flyers went up on store windows, nailed to poles, scattered in churches and gas stations across Belen. Patty's hands trembled as she pressed her daughter's smile into the world, begging strangers to remember her face. But no bike was ever found, no sign of Tara walking back, nothing. And here's the question that still burns, decades later. Did someone in this very town know the truth? See the truck, hear the rumors, hold the secret and keep quiet all these years? If so, then Tara wasn't just stolen once. She was stolen again, every single day, by the silence that swallowed her story. 10 months after Tara vanished, a discovery shook the nation. In Port St. Joe, Florida, more than 1,000 miles from Belen, a Polaroid photograph was found, lying abandoned in a convenience store parking lot. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a snapshot left behind. But look closer, and the image becomes unbearable. A young woman, bound hand and foot, her mouth sealed with duct tape, her eyes wide with terror, locked directly on the camera, as if begging the viewer to see her, to help her. Beside her, a young boy, tied in the same way, gagged helpless, and on the floor of the van where they lay, a paperback novel, My Sweet Audrina, the very book Tara Calico loved. Coincidence? Or was this a deliberate message, left like a signature, a silent cry for recognition, or worse, a planted clue, meant to taunt her grieving family, to keep their pain alive? When Patty Calico saw that photo, she didn't hesitate. She said, "That is my daughter, that's Tara," and she wasn't alone. Other relatives, friends, even independent analysts agreed. But law enforcement, they weren't so sure. To them, the photo was evidence, yes, but was it Tara? Or was it something more sinister? Proof not of hope, but of manipulation, a cruel game played with a mother's heart. The photograph traveled far beyond that Florida parking lot. Experts across the world were called in to decide the question every parent, every investigator wanted answered. Was this Tara Calico? Scotland Yard analysts in the United Kingdom studied the photo with advanced imaging. Their conclusion? Yes, the girl in the Polaroid could very well be Tara. But then came Los Alamos National Laboratory, one of America's most advanced research facilities. They looked at the same picture and flatly said no, it wasn't her. And finally, the FBI, the agency at the center of the nation's biggest investigations. After their review, they issued a single word: inconclusive. Not yes, not no, just a door left half open. 3 powerful voices, 3 different answers, and 30 years later, we are still left in the middle of that storm. So tell me, who do you believe? Do you trust Scotland Yard? Do you trust Los Alamos? Or do you believe a mother who swore, without hesitation, that the girl in that photo was her daughter? The Polaroid didn't just torment Tara's family, it ripped open another case. When the image went public, many believed they recognized the boy lying beside her. His name was Michael Henley. He was also from New Mexico. He too had vanished, just months before Tara, during a camping trip in the Zuni Mountains. For his parents, that photograph was a knife. They were certain it was Michael. For a brief, agonizing time, 2 families thought they were looking at their stolen children, side by side, trapped in the same nightmare. But in 1990, the truth cut deep. Michael's remains were found in the mountains near the very campsite where he disappeared. Exposure. A tragic end, but not the one that photo suggested. So if the boy in the Polaroid wasn't Michael Henley, then who was he? Where is he now? And why has he never been identified? It is a question that haunts this case, because if one child in that photo remains a mystery, then how can we ever be sure about the other? In the years since Tara vanished, 2 theories have fought for dominance, splitting not just investigators, but the community itself. The first theory whispers of a local cover-up, that Tara was struck, maybe even accidentally, by young men from Belen driving that pickup truck. Panicked, afraid of what they had done, they took her, and according to this theory, they did not act alone. It suggests that others, adults with power, with influence, helped bury the truth to protect their own. If that's real, then silence wasn't just fear, it was loyalty, it was corruption. The second theory paints a darker, more faceless picture, that Tara was not struck down by locals, but stalked and abducted by strangers, predators passing through. That she was taken far from New Mexico, maybe even across state lines, and that the Polaroid is the smoking gun, proof she lived, but in chains, hundreds of miles away from the desert road where she began her ride. And here lies the fracture. Was this tragedy born inside Belen, in the hands of boys the town knew by name? Or was it carried in by outsiders, ghosts on the highway who vanished without a trace? So ask yourself, did a community protect their own at the expense of truth? Or are outsiders twisting this tragedy into conspiracy? Before we continue, let me pause for something important. The story of Tara Calico is not just a mystery from the past, it's a warning for every family today.
Predators don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they drive past you in broad daylight. Sometimes they live right next door. That is why I created an ebook called Predator Next Door. Inside, I show families how to recognize hidden dangers, the signs most people ignore until it's too late. If this story chills you, if it makes you wonder how safe your own children or grandchildren really are, then I urge you to click the link in the description and grab your copy. It may save a life. Not everyone saw the Polaroid as salvation. Inside law enforcement, a bitter divide grew. Some detectives believed the photograph was nothing more than a cruel distraction, a piece of noise that hijacked the investigation, pulled resources away from Belen, and allowed the real suspects to slip deeper into the shadows. Others argued the exact opposite, that the image was the single most important piece of evidence ever linked to Tara, that ignoring it wasn't caution, it was failure. So which is it? Did the photo fuel false hope, while the real killer stayed hidden? Or did law enforcement look the other way, ignoring the biggest clue of all time? And here's the question that cuts deeper. If they dismissed that photo, what else did they miss? For most people, life moves on. Days pass, years pass, memories fade. But for Patty Calico, time stopped the moment Tara never came home. For decades she fought, she spoke to newspapers, stood in front of TV cameras, begged strangers to remember her daughter's face. She challenged investigators, demanded accountability, refused to let the world forget. Wherever she went, she carried Tara's smile with her, a photograph, a flyer, a mother's weapon against silence. But what did she get in return? Door after door closed, phone calls that ended with the same words, "We don't know." Imagine being told that again and again, "We don't know," while every fiber of your heart already does. You know your child was taken. You know someone saw something. You know someone is lying. Patty carried that knowledge for the rest of her life. And the cruelest part, she carried it alone, in a town where the truth was always too dangerous to say out loud. As the years dragged on, the case didn't fade. It twisted. It grew darker. In Belen, rumors spread like wildfire. Names whispered in hushed conversations. Stories of a truck. Stories of boys. Stories of an accident that was never meant to happen, and a desperate effort to cover it up. Some said it was small-town gossip, nothing more. But others swore the whispers carried weight, that powerful people knew the truth, and looked the other way, that secrets were traded like currency, bought and sold for silence. Imagine living in a place where everyone suspects, but no one speaks, where a mother begs for answers while neighbors shake their heads and walk away. And here is the chilling possibility. If the truth is buried in this town, then silence itself became the weapon. Not a gun, not a knife, but silence. A silence that has lasted for more than 30 years, and still holds Tara's story hostage. Before we continue, I want to speak directly to the parents and grandparents watching right now. The story of Tara Calico is not just a tragedy locked in 1988. It's a warning. She was taken on a bright morning, on a road everyone in town knew, and yet she never made it home. If it could happen to her, it can happen anywhere. That is why I created an ebook called Predator Next Door. Inside, you'll find step-by-step safety strategies, simple actions every family can take. You'll learn how to read warning signs most people ignore, how to protect children and teens when they're out in public, and how to respond fast when something feels wrong. If you've ever watched a case like Tara's and thought, what if it was my child? Then please don't miss this. The link is in the description below. Download your copy today. Because knowledge is power, and in the fight against predators, it may save a life. As the years passed, Tara Calico's disappearance became more than just a missing person case. It became a symbol, a painful reminder of America's missing children crisis. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, her story was held up alongside hundreds of others. Faces printed on milk cartons, flyers stapled to poles, names read aloud on late-night news. But Tara's case stood out because of the photograph, because of the image that no one could erase from their minds. Her pink bike became more than evidence. It became a warning for every family, that even in daylight, even in small towns where neighbors wave at each other, a child can vanish into silence. And with every year that passed without answers, trust began to break down. Law enforcement claimed they were chasing leads, but families in Belen whispered of incompetence. Some spoke of cover-ups. Others believed officials had ties too close to suspects, that the truth was being protected, not pursued. This mistrust wasn't limited to Tara's case. Across the country, families of missing teens began to see the same pattern. Slow responses, lost evidence, broken communication, and a lack of urgency once the cameras left. Tara's mother wasn't the only one to stand in front of microphones and beg for justice. Other parents, from New Mexico to New York, joined the fight. They formed networks. They pushed for change. They demanded law enforcement be held accountable, and that families of the missing be given the respect and urgency they deserved. And here's the truth viewers must sit with. Sometimes it takes one child's disappearance to shine a light on 1,000 others. Sometimes one case becomes a mirror, reflecting not just a family's grief, but a system's failures. In the end, Tara's legacy isn't only about what was lost, it's about what she represents. A generation of parents forced to ask questions they never wanted to face. A generation of communities forced to confront the reality that danger can live right next door. And a reminder that silence, corruption, and delay are killers of their own kind. Her pink bike still haunts Belen, but it also warns America, because what happened on that road in 1988 could happen anywhere. And until justice is served, Tara Calico's name will never fade. For decades, the trail seemed cold. But in 2013, a new task force was formed. Investigators determined to breathe life back into Tara's case. Files were reopened. Old witnesses re-interviewed.
Rumors tested against evidence that had sat for years. In 2021, a sealed search warrant was executed at a property in Valencia County. For a moment, the town held its breath. Had they finally found what Patty had begged for all her life? Was the truth about to break free? Then came 2023. Investigators announced something shocking. They said they knew what happened to Tara Calico. They said they knew who was responsible. They even said there was enough evidence to bring the case to the district attorney's desk. But here's the part that tears at the wound. No arrests have ever been made. No trial. No one was held accountable. The file sits in limbo. Evidence waiting. Names whispered. Justice promised but not delivered. And so we must ask the hard question. If law enforcement truly knows the truth, if they know what happened and who was involved, then why are we still waiting? Is justice being protected, or is justice being delayed? Because sometimes withholding justice can be as cruel as the crime itself. She left for a bike ride and never came home. A pink bicycle against the desert road. A Polaroid found 1,000 miles away. For some it gave hope. For others it gave only fear.